So let's look at different levels of awakening. And I'm just going to share my experience with it. And that everybody has something different. But what I know from my own journey is I can understand the aspect of the ego, and I can understand the aspect of the soul at this point. So I can look back over my journey and kind of broadly put an understanding of these different stages. And that's what I wanted to talk about. So the first stage, I would say, of my awakening was in my mid-30s when I understood that I could think about my own thinking. That's when I started to kind of look at metacognition, that I could actually pay attention to the thoughts that were going in my head. So before that, I basically thought that the conversation that was happening in my mind was the only way that I could use my mind. That was basically, I had a voice in my head talking to something else, and we were coming up with the idea that I am the hero of the story. And then after I could think about my thinking, I realized that I could observe my thoughts. And when I could observe my thoughts, the next stage was actually understanding that there was an observer inside of my mind, inside of my head. Well, it's probably not in my head, but it's in my mind. And then that notion of, oh, who the hell is the observer then that's doing the observing of the thoughts? And that was the integration. There was a lot of integration at that point, understanding that something was happening in my mind that was bigger than I ever had imagined. And I would say that at that point, I was kind of convinced at that stage that I was enlightened in some way, that I could start to understand this thing called the ego. And that's what I would say was my next level, was that I began to deconstruct the process in my head and started to filter out what was egoic and what was a soul version. So I spent this next period of time in awakening where, of course, I thought I was now I'm the hero, because now I'm one of the very few people that, and it's true, if you ask people if they can observe their thoughts, I used to ask my students this all the time, and barely anybody ever knew it. Well, that was kind of an egoic state of enlightenment for me, because I thought I can help the world because I understand the ego. And that's really when I was participating in observing the egoic form of psychology. So it's the same psychology, okay? It's just a balance from narcissism to codependence, and then you have that balance point, or the harmonic point, which would be interdependency. So during that egoic stage of awakening for myself, I was the hero because I could spot the narcissist and I could spot the codependents, and that's a big one because codependents aren't really, they're usually helped with victimhood in our culture. And so, but when you have that, you're then participating in egoic psychology. And then I began to notice that wasn't taking me very far. That wasn't taking me where I wanted. And I went through this stage of stagnation. And that's when the soulful stuff started to coming in. I started paying attention to what the soul wanted. And that was interdependency. And so it's all about attention. So in the beginning, my attention was only going back and forth between myself and the observer. And then the next level of awareness was the attention I had was on the ego. And then I was able to begin to pull myself away from the ego. And then after that, I started to look at, and my attention was focused on soulful things. So I found quotes, poems, spiritual information and concepts that had to do with the soul. And then I learned that that the soul has its own psychology, which is simply the attention of focusing on interdependency, that we can figure out our behavior and our interaction with the world from our own sensations. We don't need to live by some pre-digested religion, no pre-digested spirituality, nothing like that. That we have everything, and I have everything that I need to manage my life and move forward and be motivated to move within time without looking for villains of narcissism and codependence. And once you hit a state of interdependency, you're no longer in the fight. And as long as you're in harmony and balance when you're making choices, there's a knowing that you're on the right track, and that you're knowing, so you don't have to live with these things called regrets and constantly feeling shame. It's a matter that these things can flow right through you. So I guess the biggest point of this is, where's your attention? Where's your attention at this point in your journey? And where do you want to be? So again, have a wonderful, wonderful experience, because life is the gift of experiencing you.